Science has mapped every millimeter of your brain. It knows which neurons fire when you feel fear, which structures activate when you fall in love, which circuits collapse when you lose your mind. And with all of that, with every electron microscope and fMRI machine and Nobel Prize science, still cannot answer this one question. Why are you experiencing anything at all? Not how or why. Why is there something it is like to be you right now as you watch this? There is a sensation happening inside you, the specific quality of what it feels like to see light. The private texture of your own awareness. No brain scan can locate it. No equation can derive it. No philosopher has solved it in 3,000 years of trying, and the reason that matters is not academic. The reason it matters is that everything you believe about free will, identity, and the self rests entirely on an assumption about consciousness that we cannot prove. In the next 19 minutes, I am going to decode the hard problem of consciousness, the one problem that David Chalmers identified in 1995 that split philosophy and neuroscience permanently. I'm going to show you the philosophical zombie thought experiment that still has no refutation. I'm going to show you what happened to patients whose brains were split in half, and what it revealed about whether you have a unified self at all. And I am going to give you the framework that serious scientists now believe may be the only viable answer, one that overturns almost everything you were taught. David Chalmers presented this problem at a conference in Tucson in 1995. The room full of scientists and philosophers went silent, not because it was new, Descartes had circled it in 1641, but because Chalmers had finally formulated it precisely enough that no one could pretend it wasn't there. It has not been solved since. Let's decode why. Here is what neuroscience is very good at. It can explain attention, the mechanism by which your brain selects some stimuli over others. It can explain memory consolidation, emotional regulation, the integration of sensory information. These are what Chalmers called easy problems. Not easy in difficulty, easy in the sense that they are, in principle, solvable by the right kind of neuroscience. Map the circuits, understand the function, problem closed. The hard problem is completely different. The hard problem asks why any of those physical processes, neurons firing, electrochemical signals cascading, produce experience at all. Why isn't it all just information processing in the dark? Why is there an inner light? Consider thermostat. It processes information. It detects temperature. It responds. Nobody thinks there is something it is like to be a thermostat. The question is, at what point in the process does experience appear? And the answer: science gives more complexity, more integration, more processing power, is not actually an answer. It just pushes the question back one level. Why does more complexity create experience when less complexity does not? This is the explanatory gap, and it sits at the foundation of everything. In 1995, Chalmers proposed a thought experiment that has never been adequately refuted. Imagine a being, call it a philosophical zombie, that is physically identical to you in every way. Same neurons, same brain structure, same behavioral outputs. It says I see red when it sees red. It flinches when it is hurt. It laughs when something is funny. But inside, there is nothing. No experience. No inner life. The lights are off. The question Chalmers asked was, is a philosophical zombie conceivable? Most people's immediate intuition is yes. You can imagine such a being without logical contradiction. And if it is conceivable, if there is no logical impossibility in a being that processes information without experiencing anything, then experience is not logically entailed by physical processes, which means consciousness is something over and above the physical. Materialist philosophers have pushed back on this for 30 years. The best counter-argument is that zombies are not actually conceivable once you think carefully enough, that our intuition of their possibility is just a failure of imagination, like people once thought it was conceivable that water wasn't HU. But here is the problem with that response. It is not a demonstration. It is an assertion. Nobody has shown why physical processes necessarily produce experience. They have only asserted that they must. The gap remains open. In the 1960s, neurosurgeon Joseph Levine and neuropsychologist Roger Sperry began operating on severe epilepsy patients by severing the corpus callosum, the primary connection between the brain's two hemispheres. The seizures stopped, but something else happened that nobody had predicted. These patients appeared entirely normal in daily life. They spoke, reasoned, navigated the world. But in the laboratory, under controlled conditions, they revealed something extraordinary. The two hemispheres of the brain, now disconnected, responded as if they were separate conscious agents. Show an image to the left visual field, which feeds the right hemisphere, and the patient cannot verbally report seeing it, but the left hand, controlled by the right hemisphere, can draw it. Ask the patient why their left hand drew what it drew, and the verbal left hemisphere, with no access to what the right hemisphere saw, confabulates. It invents a reason, confidently, immediately. The brain does not report truth, it constructs narrative, and the question this raises about consciousness is devastating. If the corpus callosum is severed, and two streams of experience appear to diverge, which one is you? If the answer is both, then you were never as unified as you believed. If the answer is neither, then what is the thing reading this sentence? The self is not a fact. It is a construction. And the thing doing the constructing is invisible to the thing being constructed. There are currently 3 serious positions on consciousness held by people who have thought hardest about this problem. The first is eliminative materialism, the view that consciousness, as we understand it, does not actually exist. The problem: it requires you to deny what is most immediately certain, that you are experiencing something right now. It trades the hard problem for an even harder one. The second is property dualism, the view Chalmers defends. Physical processes are real, but they have irreducible experiential properties that cannot be derived from physical description. The brain generates experience the way a fire generates heat. It is a separate property arising from physical processes, but not reducible to them. The problem: this leaves the mechanism entirely unexplained. The third is panpsychism, the oldest, and now the most seriously reconsidered position in philosophy of mind. The view that experience is not something that emerges from physical matter at high complexity, but is a fundamental feature of the universe itself, present at all levels of reality. Not that rocks are conscious in the way you are conscious, but that experience, in some minimal, proto-conscious form, is as fundamental as mass or charge. Physicists, including Roger Penrose, philosophers, including Philip Goff, they are not fringe thinkers. And what drives serious people toward panpsychism is not mysticism, it is logic. If experience cannot be derived from non-experience, then either experience was always there, or it appeared from nowhere, and appearance from nowhere is not science. This is not a comfortable conclusion. It is the conclusion that has survived every other attempt at refutation. Here is what the hard problem gives you that psychology cannot. Psychology can tell you how you behave. Neuroscience can tell you which circuits produce the behavior. But neither can touch the thing that makes any of it matter, the fact that you are there to experience it. The fact that there is an inside to your existence, a private theater where all of this unfolds. That inside, that irreducible quality of what it is like to be you is the one thing in the universe that cannot be fully observed from the outside. It cannot be measured. It cannot be transmitted. It can only be lived. And if you have been watching this channel long enough to understand what I am building, that is not comfort. That is the architecture. The architecture of the thing that makes you the last mystery that science cannot touch. If this framework changed something in how you see this, that subscribe button means the next video reaches you directly. No algorithm required.